Hello guys, welcome to my channel where we're gonna be learning together the Java programming language. As you know, Java is one of the most popular programming language and it's widely used. It's used almost everywhere. So a lot of people, you'll see that a lot of people say that Java is hard, even though it's a little bit tricky, but I feel like with the right learning you can get to feel comfortable with learning Java. So on these tutorials, me and you, we're gonna be both learning. So if you see some of the things that you feel like I need to improve on, maybe I need to apply better standards, you know what, just comment below, tell me where you feel like just post your opinion. This is an open space, no one is gonna judge you. Opinions are welcomed here. So with all that being said, let's dive in. So this class had been already created in the last video, so I'm just gonna go again and create a new class. So you're gonna come here on the default package and you can right click and say new class, and we're gonna give it a name. So since we're starting from the basics, let's just call it basics. Then just make sure that you click on the public because we want this the main function to be generated. So voila, that's that. The basics class is generated. So you see, by default, because we clicked, some of you might not have this IDE, the Eclipse IDE. Some of you might be using a text file to run this thing, but I will highly recommend that you check my other video for how to install Eclipse Workspace on your on your PC. It's for Windows people. I'll try to make a video for Linux and people who use Macs. So with that being said, when you create a class, you can select for it to come with these default functions like this public static void main. You may be asking yourself, what is that? This is the entry class in Java. This is the heart. If maybe we are talking about human anatomy, we will call this the human heart, because in every class or every methods that we're gonna write in everything, at the end of the day they need to be referenced in this main class, so that when the Java compiles the code, it knows what it needs to do. So in Java we have these things called data types. There are several data types. There are primitive and non-primitive data types. So I'm gonna be explaining over how the difference between primitive and non-primitive data types, giving out example. The most commonly one, it's an int. It's an int. We can just name it int a. Int a. Int holds integers. It holds integers like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, you name it, from 0 to 9, whatever. So basically it's just like whole numbers, if my math is still correct. So again, another data type that we have on the primitive side, we have a double. This one, if you can check, the difference between the int and the double is that a double holds numbers that have commas, so maybe if I can initialize it now, this one will be 5,2. This will be 5,2. But for an int, you can't say let me initialize it now. You can't say 7,1. It will complain, you see. So an int needs a whole number, so remember that. Another one that also works like a double, it's a float. You can say float f equals to 4,2. But float also works like a double, but you see it's giving us an error. The only difference is that when you write a float, you have to also include an f at the end of the value. So that's the another difference between a double and a float. And plus, if you're gonna be using, it depends on the values that you're gonna be dealing with. If you're gonna be dealing with big calculations, it's mostly advised that you use a double. But if it's gonna be bigger calculations, you can use big decimal, but we can talk about that later. But for the tutorials that we're gonna be doing here, double and floats are gonna be okay. But for more research, you can just go and Google the difference between big decimal, double, and the float. Another data type that is widely used in Java, it's a long. This one is like an int, but it can hold larger values than an int. So we can just say we can initialize it to whatever number. You see. Another one, it's a char. It's a char. So a char, you use a single inverted commas. So if I might have made a mistake with the naming this. Usually I call them ears. So a char uses this single inverted comma so that it can store its values. So for example, it stores alphabets, but not a combination of alphabets, but only a single alphabet. It's only A. If maybe you're storing, we can just say A, then you see. But if you say B, you see it gives an error because it stores what? A single alphabet. The other counter for a char is a string. Yeah, now a string is there's no other way. You won't be you won't find many scenarios where you won't be using a string. It's commonly used. So it's a string. A string, we can just name it a string s equals to, then this one uses doubles instead of, you see the difference between the char one and the string. So this one you can just name it what? Pi, because it allows to hold multiple alphabets inside. So these are the most commonly used. There's also byte. There's also short, but for the sake of these tutorials, some of the things you can you can research going forward with the tutorials or on your spare time. But these are the most commonly used data types. And I have made a mistake because a string is part of the non-primitive data types alongside the things like arrays, objects, array, objects. Those are the types that follow under non-primitive data types, and these ones are the primitive data types, you see. So this is how you make a comment in Java. There are several types of comment, but this, it's when you make a single line comment. So this is non-primitive data types. So you may be asking yourself, why learn these data types? When you are creating programs in Java, you will need to create variables, and those variables, for example, as you can see, they all start with the data type, or the kind of data type that they are, because you can't use a number with a number with a point value on an int, you see. And if usually they do ask these questions in interviews and stuff, or maybe in in exams and stuff, whatever. So we call this, from this up until here, we call this declaration. We have declared what? A variable, and we gave it a name. We called it the variable name is A. You can just name it whatever that you want, but the more we write more programs, the more the variables, it's advised to be more descriptive. But for the sake of this learning, that's why I'm just giving it simple alphabet name, so that you can see the point. So up until from here to here, it's called a declaration. You have declared what? A variable. You have created a space in the memory called what? A variable called what? A. So from here to this to the equal, from the equal sign up until the 7 and the semicolon, it's what we call initialization. We are initializing, we are occupying that space that we created in the memory. What space? A space. Because we went in the Java memory and said, you know what, I want to have this space. Like a variable is like a container that can be filled with something. So that container is called A in the memory of Java. Then it's filled with a number, with a value called 7, an integer called 7. And when you create a space and you have defined the data type, it also expects that the same data type to be, to be the occupier of that space, because you can't fill in a space of an integer and fill in a double. It won't allow that, as you have seen when I demonstrated that. So you will see in most of the lines in Java, you have to end them in a semicolon. Is it a semicolon or colon? Yeah, whatever. Because if you don't end it there like that, it's gonna complain and it's gonna give you an error. So you see. So usually in Java we can perform simple arithmetic operations. We can come and say int sum equals to a multiplied by a. Then we close it. Then we can use this line system.out.print line. Then inside the print line, okay, I made a mistake with the wording. Print line, print ln. Inside the print ln, we do what we call the sum. Then we close. Then when we close, we hit run. We don't want to test the hello world. We just only want the basics. You see, it says 49 because of what? Because of 7 multiply 7 times 7, it's 49. Basic maths, all right. Also, we can come and say what? 7 divided by 7. What is it gonna? The answer should be 1. Let's see. C is 1, correct. So if for example, let's create another variable and call it int, just call it int t is equals to maybe 2, and say 2. Then we say what? A divided by int 2 by int t. We expect, so that because 2, we know that 2, when we divide 7 by 2, it has to go like 3 comma something, if I'm not mistaken, because it goes like 3 times in 6, then 1 is left, then 1 is a reminder. And I want to show you the difference when you're doing arithmetic operations between when you're using double and an int. So let's see the value. We're testing for basics. Then it says 3, but that is not the correct answer. Because of what? Because there are some numbers after the comma that is missing. So that's why it's advisable when you are dividing, it's better to use doubles. If you're dealing with numbers that have commas, you use doubles, you see. So if we're using doubles, okay, let me just create another double so that I can show you. So this one is going to be R. We call it, let me just call it 6,2. Okay, no, 5,2 was okay. 2,3. Then we close. We say what? D is divided by R, and let's see what's the error. D double R D. Oh, it's, you see, it's complaining because what? The data type that I've used here, it's an int, and the numbers that I'm dealing here are what? Are doubles. So that's why we need to say what? Double. Then the error is gone. Then we run the program. When we run the program, it should give us a number with, you see. But when we proceed further, we're gonna learn some techniques of of cutting these other values to rounding them up, so that they can be accurate as much as possible. So what can we do? Okay, we haven't tried any strings. Okay, for strings we can do it like this. Let's remove the sum here. Similar as how we printed out the double in the terminal, you can do what? You can say string, but before a string you can add 2 strings. You can concatenate strings, you can manipulate strings as much as possible. Before we do that, you're allowed to do this in Java. You can say what? I really love what you love. Let's see when we run how it's gonna be. See, I really love what pi, because it took what this variable s and placed it here, then it, you know, it merged it with the string that was already static defined inside the parent line. So basically that's most of the operations that you can do to, you know, to manipulate these data types, the primitive and non-primitive data types in Java. So I'm avoiding to explain some of the non-primitive data types like methods and stuff, because we're gonna deal them after, you know, we have learned these kind of like, you know, basic operations and stuff. So on the next video we're going to jump into things like loops, you know. Yeah, jump into loops so that we can see how, because we can see how we can use loops at our advantage. Then more on that on the next video. Thank you.